Louisiana's poet laureate, Alison Pelegrin, brings poetry to a place that often silences the human spirit. Through her Lifelines Poetry Project, Alison goes into state prison systems to help inmates find their voice and ultimately peace. Here's more. Louisiana State Poet Laureate Alison Pelegrin joins us here in studio to talk about her 2 years of service as the State Poet Laureate and also a project that she launched during her service called the Lifelines Poetry Project that works with incarcerated individuals. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
First of all, congratulations. Tell me what goes into selecting a State Poet Laureate.
Well, it's quite a process. The Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities is the organization that is in charge of running this process, and one has to be nominated by someone, and then if you accept the nomination, there's a list of requirements that you need to submit, such as letters of recommendation, a resume, a list of publications, and probably most important would be a letter kind of talking about what you might do in the role and how what you see that you might be able to accomplish as Louisiana Poet Laureate.
Which begs the question, what do you want to accomplish as the State Poet Laureate?
It's kind of a funny story because I did not have a really clear vision when I entered the role. I didn't have the idea for Lifelines Poetry Project until I visited the poetry group at Angola, which is Louisiana State Penitentiary. I was invited there as part of a conference in which I was participating, and I was a little nervous because I simply didn't know what I could offer to this group of people. But I walked into the library after going through security and, gates opening and shutting, and I was just in a room with people who were passionate about language and excited to talk about poetry, and all the other things that had given me pause or that had made me wonder went away, and we were just right there talking about poetry.
How does the Lifelines Poetry Project work?
So with Lifelines, I've been able to visit, I think by this point, 12 different prisons or locations in Louisiana to lead poetry workshops with incarcerated writers. And all that means is that we're sitting in a group. It's usually about 15 to 20 people, sometimes more, just depending. And I'll bring a handout with me that has different poems on it we can talk about for inspiration. We talk about language when we first started writing, and then we all start kind of writing poems together, and people love to read them and give feedback and support each other. It's just been really great.
What would you say about the power of poetry with those who are incarcerated? What has been your experience working with them?
Well, it's only been a wonderful experience. And the power of poetry, I mean, I've been a teacher for 20 years at Southeastern, and I always feel a little bit as though I'm at a pulpit when I'm in front of a classroom talking about poetry. It feels more like preaching to me than teaching. And it's partly because I'm passionate about it, but it's also because that's how important poetry is. And when you factor in someone who's living in a very restricted setting for a very long period of time with very little to do and very little freedom to move about, words and the ability to say what you think and what you feel become of the utmost important. So it's just really been a joy for me to witness this happen.
You brought some of the poems that people in your workshop wrote. Read me one of those. I'd love for our viewers to hear the work that is generated, the art that is generated from these poetry workshops.
And so this is a cento poem, and what that means is that it's a poem made up of lines by different writers. So I put these together, but I didn't add anything. These are just straight up lines written by incarcerated writers over the last year, people who've shared their work with me for this purpose. The clock can't save me from this prison sonnet. Let me stand and smile. Will listening unlock the mystery? My mind is stuck on one page. Today I'm feeling dark and want no one to see me. Hurting people can lose their hope here behind these walls. Part prison, part daycare center, dreaming of the cool grass. The spatters of rain have nowhere to be.
These are powerful, poetic words, raw emotion, and also I imagine therapeutic.
Absolutely, absolutely. When I read this, it always gives me chills because I can just see some of these different people I've met reading their work out loud and struggling to put in the words transformation, redemption, remorse, joy, sorrow, all those things.
We're going to wrap up our interview with what do you plan to do as you finish out your 2 years of service as Louisiana State Poet Laureate?
Well, I'm trying to get into as many prisons as I can, which I know sounds like a strange statement. I plan to continue this work. I think it's so important and vital. And there's no way, if I get an invitation to visit with a group of incarcerated writers, that I would ever say no.
Well, Alison Pelegrin, thank you for all you do, for sharing your art and those beautiful words.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a
course.
pleasure.
Thank you.